Good evening. This is Mark N4UFP, and we'll start out with a quick synopsis of the April 2020 Section Manager's Report. I'd like everybody to remember that the South Carolina Section website, ARRLSC.org, has lots more information, including the full section report. I'll just provide a synopsis this evening. And of course, there is also other important information there for amateurs in South Carolina. First, I'll talk about upcoming ham fests in our area. And I'd like to begin with some sad news. The Waynesville Ham Fest, scheduled for 25 July 2020 in Waynesville, North Carolina, has been canceled. I got an announcement from Ruth, WA4VT, the Hamfest chair. She says, following orders from the governor of North Carolina and the North Carolina Department of Human Services, fairgrounds such as Smoky Mountain Event Center, formerly the Haywood County Fairgrounds, are not hosting events with anticipated attendance of more than, I believe it's 50 people due to COVID-19. So they've canceled the event this year, but they are looking forward to all the vendors and attendees coming back for the 2021 Waynesville Ham Fest next July. This is one of my favorite ham fests, even though it's not in South Carolina. It's in Haywood County, Waynesville, North Carolina, way west in the state, in the mountains, and it's a great time of year to go up there in July. Beautiful weather, nice folks, and even though they won't be able to run the Ham Fest this year, I'm looking forward to seeing them all in 2021. There are some Ham Fests that are on the calendar still. Let me talk about those real quick. The first would be the Shelby Ham Fest, scheduled for 4 through 6 September 2020. It will be located again at the Cleveland County Fairgrounds, 1751 East Marion Street, Shelby, North Carolina. On Friday, the buildings and flea market open 9 to 5. Saturday, the gates open from 7 to 5, buildings open 8 to 5. Sunday, gates and buildings open 8 to 1. Admission, $10 at the gate. There will be VE testing. All right. For more information, contact chairman@shelbyhamfest.org. The Upstate Ham Fest, originally this was scheduled for the first Saturday in May, and it was rescheduled, as a result of the COVID situation in South Carolina, for the 12th of September 2020. The location, everything else is the same. It'll be at the Piedmont Interstate Fairgrounds in Spartanburg, hours 8 a.m. to 2 p.m., sponsored by the Blue Ridge Amateur Radio Society, and you can check their website for additional information as we get closer to the date. And please, again, change of date, 12 September 2020. Finally, the Rock Hill Ham Fest in Rock Hill, South Carolina, October 3rd, 2020. Location, same as last year, Newkirk Baptist Church, 175 Museum Road, Rock Hill, South Carolina. Right now, the tentative hours, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. I do not know if there will be VE testing. I did talk to the folks at the York County Amateur Radio Society, the sponsors, and they say they are definitely going to run the Ham Fest. They're still working out some of the details. Stay tuned for further information. Okay, that's a look at what's going on in the world of Ham Fests. And now, it's probably a good time to change subjects and talk a little bit about Field Day.
There we go. You should be able to hear me now. Mark, you're looking good. Bruce did make it. We were a little worried he didn't get the email, but he came in just the nick of time.
I'm here. Good to see you, Brad. Mark, how are you?
Guys.
Great. Glad you're with us, Bruce.
Yeah, Mark's down at Edisto right now, so if you hear some waves crashing in the background, he is literally on the beach.
Yes, and it's getting dark out, so you can't see much behind me, but you can probably hear the waves. Anyway, so Field Day 2020 is almost upon us, and things are definitely going to be a little different this year. Let me start out by framing the whole thing with some important information from the league. The league decided to make two changes to the rules this year, temporary waivers, that I think will have a big impact on how clubs, how amateurs structure field day operations this year. Number one, for field day 2020 only, Class D stations can work other Class D stations for points. And waiver number two, or rule change number two, an aggregate club score only for 2020 will be published. And what will happen is the league's software will tally up individual member scores into an aggregate club score. Now, for that to happen, you'll have to let the league know when you enter your field day score, your club affiliation. You'll have to let them know who your club is. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I think there's some questions that are coming about that. But that's basically what the league has done, and I appreciate them thinking this through and coming up with some ways to make field day more flexible and give some consideration to the situation we all find ourselves in this year. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our guest this evening, one of a couple that we'll have, Bruce Campbell from the Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club. And Bruce, I'd like you to talk a little bit about what you guys are planning. I've been fortunate to come by and visit the Spartanburg Club on field day a number of times, and you guys always make a major effort. I don't care where you are. You guys always make a major effort. You do a great job, and I'd like to hear a little bit from you. Tell us about what Spartanburg is thinking and what you guys are planning this year.
All right, Mark. Well, yes, you're right. We do make a big deal out of field day. It's always the high point of our yearly activities. I'm not sure who else is on the call here tonight, but just to introduce myself, as Mark said, my name is Bruce Campbell. My call sign is WA8OJR. I live here in Spartanburg. I've been a member of the Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club for a long time, a faithful participant in all of the activities, including field day. Avid contester, with CW being my favorite mode. And with this year's field day, under the situation that we're living under, we've had to make some adjustments, just as everyone else has. For the past several years, we've had our field day event at one of the local volunteer fire departments. The Drayton Fire Department has been very gracious to allow us to use their facility. They have a beautiful new building, lots of space inside the building, lots of property surrounding the building with some tall trees that we use for our antenna installation. It's been a real joy for us to use that facility during field day. But obviously, with the COVID situation, the fire department is not allowing anyone from the outside to be in the building, which is completely understandable. They certainly don't want the disease spreading through their firefighters. So our board of directors has had discussions, and we've come up with a couple of possible plans. Nothing has been solidified as yet. We still have to make some decisions. It's a fluid situation. But what we've been thinking about is, number one, taking advantage of the rule changes and have our members operate field day from their home stations with the aggregate score accumulated as Mark has described. That would certainly eliminate the problem of any risk of transfer of disease. The other option we have is one of our club members owns a manufacturing company. They have a large building that has a lot of open space inside, some property surrounding it where there's room for antennas. He has graciously offered us the opportunity to use that building for field day. The board of directors has not had a chance to inspect that facility completely, but from his description, it sounds like it might be usable. Of course, if we do that, we're going to have some very clearly defined performance requirements for the people that attend that. We would probably have to limit the total number of people in the building. We would have to ensure appropriate social distancing. We may have to discuss the use of face masks, which is not going to go over too well with some of our members, I'm sure. But the bottom line is our board of directors is primarily concerned about the safety and health of our members. So we are going to come up with a plan for field day that will involve little or no risk, and at the same time allow our members to enjoy the fun of field day. So that's basically where we're at this point. And as I say, it's an evolving situation. And before the big day comes along, we will have a plan in place.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. I had the opportunity a few days ago to talk to some folks from the York County Amateur Radio Society, right here in Rock Hill in York County. And I think they're actually going to try to run field day in a more traditional way. They will probably use a local park, and they're going to use the entire 1,000-foot radius space that's allowed for field day. And they'll set up probably 2, maybe 3 stations, several hundred feet apart, and they're still developing some protocols. I think the trick is figuring out how to check one person in to operate and check another person out. They're going to have to sanitize everything. They're still working through those details, but that's their plan.
It's going to take some time.
It is going to take some time. Logistics are going to be everything, but that's what they want to do, and they think they can make it work. I hope they can. The good news is, if they can't, they can certainly leverage one of those rule waivers and take advantage of using individual operators to pull together an aggregate club score. I had some discussions with folks at the league about that, and different people saw different issues associated with that. And one that I do understand, people were afraid if you made field day an event where you could just run it from home, that people might just run field day from home, and it might hamper future club activity. But this is a one-time thing, so I don't think that'll be the case. I suspect by next year things will be something closer to normal, if not normal, and we'll be back to something that looks much more like a traditional field day. Bruce, I'm curious, what's the membership at large think about all this over at Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club?
Well, we have not had an in-person meeting for several months. We've had our monthly meetings on the air. We had one this past week, and we really have not, at least I personally do not know about what kind of feedback there's been from the general membership. It's interesting to hear what Rock Hill is thinking about doing. I don't know how it is with other groups, but with the Spartanburg Club, the social aspect of field day is almost as important as the radio aspect. It's a time for us all to get together. It's about the only time of the year when we're all in one place at the same time. We always prepare a meal, and we enjoy social time together. So with restrictions that are going to be put in place because of this COVID situation, you kind of have to wonder if really it's worth all the effort, if we're not going to be able to enjoy the social part of the activity.
That is a topic that has come up over and over again, the social aspect of field day. It's fascinating. I travel all over the state on field day, and I run different routes in different years. Sometimes I've been fortunate enough to visit the Spartanburg Club when I'm in the upstate. Last couple of years, I've been in the Midlands and Low Country, and no matter where I go, what club I visit, field day is always in part about the social aspect. It is a time for club members to get together. It is a time for clubs, in some cases, to showcase what they're doing to folks in the community. And that is a piece of field day that's going to be hard to replicate this year. And it's just the nature of the situation that we find ourselves in. I think it is temporary, and I think eventually we'll get back to something more normal. But Bruce, you're absolutely right. That is a huge component of field day. I don't care if it's a very competitive club that treats field day like a contest. There is still a social element that involves both the clubs and the communities around them. And that is what's going to be missing, I think. And that is a big part of field day. Brad, go ahead, Bruce.
I don't think you have to worry about field day becoming a conventional contest situation. I think everybody recognizes the social importance of the event. And even if we have to skip that for 1 year, I think in 2021, everybody will be back waiting for that get together to happen at the end of June.
Yeah, I think you're right. And Bruce, just like you were saying, there's only 2 times of the year that you're going to get the majority of your membership together, and that's going to be field day and probably if you guys have a Christmas party or anything like that. Other than that, it's hard to get everybody together for a club meeting. And I know that is going to be missed. Hopefully everybody's been able to do some type of thing. I know the Rock Hill Club's been doing like presentations on YouTube, and with that nature, YouTube Live. You guys are nice to hear. You guys actually are doing your club meetings on the air, you said?
Yeah, we've done that for the past 2 months. Our president, Lisa Davis, N4BOO, has done a good job of putting together those meetings. We run it off of an agenda, just like we would as an in-person meeting. The officers have their reports that they give, and it's pretty much just like an in-person meeting, except we're not in person.
And you don't have to worry about the interruptions.
Don't have to worry about interruptions. Yeah.
It's not a bad idea, and it's a good way to do it. What are you guys doing this on 2 meters on the local repeater there, or simplex, or what?
Yeah, exactly, on the local repeater. Yep.
Well, hey, you know what? That's the way to do it. I know some other people might have done Zoom and things like that. And I know we do radio, but getting back to the social interaction, we still need to see each other every once in a while. Mm-hmm. And that was part of the club meeting, right? Being able to hang out. So,
yeah.
Sometimes I like what you're doing on the air. That's good. That's the first club we've heard doing that. I imagine there's others, just some we haven't heard about, but that's real good. Thanks for letting us know that.
Yeah, we've had some folks check into the on-the-air meeting that we've never seen in person at a conventional meeting. So that's been kind of interesting. Call sign I've heard before. They show up on the air for the meeting.
So we got a question.
Well, I'm looking at the feed, and we just had a comment from John Gendron, NJ4Z in Rock Hill at the York County Club. And he was saying that they absolutely will not have a field day dinner at field day. They're going to try to reschedule it later in the year. And that just underscores the importance of the social aspect. It's something that you can reschedule, but you absolutely cannot cancel. They're going to have a field day dinner no matter what. That's good to hear.
Well, there's another good comment. It says using Microsoft Teams for meetings and virtual lunch each week. Because up here there's a lunch bunch. I don't know if it's once a week or something. Is that what it is, Mark? They get together
once a week.
Yeah. So Teams is free. Along with Skype and Zoom, you can get a free account for like 40 minutes. Everybody just needs to see each other. But we do have a question regarding field day from Ronnie.
Yeah, Ronnie Livingston down in Columbia. Hello, Ronnie. It's good to see your question. Wants to know if FT8 will be allowed, and it absolutely is. FT8 is allowed during field day, and the newer versions of FT8 are a lot more contest friendly. You can go into contest mode and put the exchange in there. And I suspect that there will be a lot of people running FT8. FT8 is the one mode you can run when there isn't anything else you can do. Conditions could be really marginal. And for folks that are skilled CW operators, that's not necessarily a challenge. But other folks will find FT8's a way to make some contacts under conditions you couldn't otherwise. Certainly you can't rag chew. It's very scripted. You have to go through the messages. But
unless they use JS8 call, then you can react that. It takes some time.
Yes, you could do it that way. But FT8, Ronnie, to answer your question, FT8 is an allowed mode in field day. It's one of the digital modes, and if that's what you're thinking of doing, good luck with it. You're going to make a lot of contacts. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of other people doing the same thing.
Especially if they're working from home or everything's already set up. They don't have to drag a bunch of stuff out.
Yep, and John's making fun of the background behind me. Says I must be at the beach. I guess he can hear the waves. It's dark out now, so you can't see anything.
When Mark and I first got on about 10 minutes before 9, there was a blue glow behind him. And then about the time this started, that went to a very dark navy, and now it's completely black.
Completely black. Well, in an hour or so, the moon will be up, and probably the background will get a little bit more interesting.
But talking about FT8, before we get off that, Bruce, do you guys do any FT8, or do you know if you guys have planned for FT8 for field day?
We have not. It has been discussed, and we have a couple of guys in the group that are very much into FT8, and I'm sure we'll be doing it here, if not this year, then quickly. thought FT4 was going to be the go-to digital mode for
Contest.
Whatever happened to that?
Good question. It's still around. FT4 had an Achilles heel. It was fast, but not nearly as sensitive as FT8. If you run an FT8, you might be able to work somebody at minus 25 dB. A signal so weak you can't hear it and it barely paints the waterfall, but you'll make a contact with them. FT4 is a lot faster, but probably minus 18, minus 19 is all you're going to get. Mm-hmm. Now, interestingly enough, in a contest, if you think about it, it's not too often that you work somebody that has a weak signal in a contest. Normally,
you just don't hear them.
Yeah, you don't hear them because there are plenty of strong signals, and that's what you're looking for. So it may actually be a better choice because it's so quick. In 30 seconds, boom, you're done and on to the next one, which is pretty fast for a digital mode of that type.
And just because they're weak on you doesn't mean they're not loud to somebody else. So the bandwagon.
You ask what we've done in the past. We usually run 2 stations, one CW, one sideband. We don't have any. Well, I shouldn't say any, but contesting we are not a contest club. Let's put it that way. A couple of guys, myself included, are fairly active contesters, but everybody else, it's the only time they work a contest is field day and maybe sweepstakes. So we kind of try and encourage folks who maybe have not done a lot of contesting to take advantage of the field day opportunity and get their feet wet with that. So that has been successful in the past.
Well, I know normally when I go, the few times I visited the Spartanburg Club, I've usually gotten there. It's after dark. So in the summertime, that's pretty late. And I usually walk in on you working CW. You got the headphones on, your head shuts down, and like I'm walking all around. You got no idea I'm there.
Yeah.
I tap you on the back and scare the crap out of you. Sure.
Somehow I always got tapped for the graveyard shift. I usually start about 10 at night and go all night. So actually, I enjoy doing that. It's an interesting experience.
Well, I mean, that's where all the CW activity is going on at night anyway, on the low bands.
Yeah. And if we can stay clear of the thunderstorms, why we can keep the station on the air.
It's always going to be one.
Continuously the whole time. So.
Well, it is the end of June, so thunderstorms are a real possibility.
Yep.
Every time I've had that route, there's always been at least one. It's usually about the time I leave Anderson, so late afternoon.
Well, I've generally been lucky, and I've seen the Spartanburg Club both at Old Dark 30 when Bruce is out there banging away on a set of paddles, or I've gone in the afternoon, and I have to tell you something. When it comes to a field day dinner, the guys at Spartanburg have it dialed in. I'm sorry.
Wow, man, last year they had shrimp. I walked in like, God, why didn't I come here first? They've always had the best food and the most food.
Last year was something special.
The only group I've seen that
we were giving awards out last year, so when you brought it, it was money time.
The only club I've ever seen that came even close to what Spartanburg has done, a couple of years, the Carolina DX Association ran a field day operation down in Chester County, South Carolina, and they must have some members that are chefs. Oh my God, they had baked ziti and all kind. I mean, it was like going to an Italian restaurant. I was amazed.
Wow.
But in terms of knocking it year after year, tough to beat Spartanburg.
Well, as we said before, that's part of the experience.
Yep. Absolutely.
Be together, enjoy a great meal. The food is always better at field day, no matter what's served. That's all part of it.
It's like pizza. Even bad pizza's good.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But you'll still eat it. Pizza, Remember what I told you earlier.
You must have seen the comment on the you must scroll across. Tammy decided you're having a good hair day, and I'm probably having a less than good hair day.
She said you're having a no hair day. She's full of it tonight. Here's her latest one. I guess the Columbia Club's going to have some pretty good field day dinners on it. We didn't get invited to those.
I have been invited and I have made it, and they do have a good dinner. And I don't want the guys of the Columbia Club to get mad at me, but it's Spartanburg. That's the one to beat. If you're talking about a field day meal in terms of the bread to the offerings and the food and the desserts, I'm sorry, really tough to beat those guys.
So maybe you don't want to spread that around. I mean, we might get some refugees from Columbia or someplace, or Greer or one of those places coming over and eating our food.
Well, Greer, I tell you, Greer always had one of the greatest places when they were out there at Lake Robinson. Now they got a new game warden down there, so they got run out because they weren't supposed to be there after dark. They just weren't supposed to be there. But that new place that they have, that Y up in Travelers Rest, is just as a good a spot. I think there's just no lake there. So they still have a good spot and a huge turnout of people. Every time I've been up there, it's been loaded with people. But it's right there at dinner time, so I'm sure that's part of it. By the time I get to Spartanburg, it's a lot later, so a lot of people cleared out. But most of the food is there, and a lot of desserts are there, and everybody is saying, "Please have some more pecan pie." And I'm like, "Oh no, okay, And after 3 slices, you're like, "I got to get out of here."
I've got a question about what other clubs do as far as scheduling operations. Do they just have as a kind of come as you are kind of situation as far as working the radios, or do they schedule people for specific time slots? How do other clubs handle that?
My experience,
go ahead.
has been the clubs have some sort of a field day roster that gets filled out ahead of time. And so they know when people are supposed to be there. However, it can get a little interesting when the person who's about to finish up doesn't actually know the person who shows up next. I learned this the hard way about 3-4 years ago. I was working the stations along the coast, and the Charleston Club runs their field day operation out of the USS Yorktown. So I got there about dusk, parked, and of course, first thing I learned is even a World War II aircraft carrier is a big boat. You're going to do some walking. So I found where the field day station was, and I knocked on the door, and the guy looks at me, says, "Jesus Christ, you're late. I'm glad you're here." And he hands me some paperwork, and he walks away. So for about 20 minutes, I was making contacts for the Charleston Club, and eventually Rick Valentine, N8BKN, who was, I don't think he was president that year, but he might have been field day chair. He came by, saw me sitting in that chair, and he says, "What the hell are you doing?" Well, I said, "Well, this guy handed me a key and told me it was my shift." So I sat down and made some contact.
We sometimes have the opposite problem. Sometimes we have trouble finding people that are willing to sit in front of the radio and make contacts.
Well, that's the exact problem that they had. Mark just happened to walk in at the wrong time.
Yeah, it was great, and I didn't, and I didn't screw up. I made some contacts, and I was glad I was able to help them out a little bit. But you're right, some people are afraid, and my wife is a ham, W7LEE, and she likes contesting. Her sister and her sister's husband, they live on a farm in Ohio, KD8JOT and KD8DCQ. They're also hams. And my sister-in-law, Paula, has a bad case of mic fright. And we basically had to, we had to threaten her with mayhem before we could get her to pick up a microphone on field day. Funny part was, once she made 3 or 4 contacts and she kind of got on a roll, then we couldn't get her out of the chair. So, it was just a matter of getting her used to it.
Yeah.
Now, that having been said, her favorite mode is FT8. Once she discovered FT8, and she told me, "I love this. I can make a contact and I don't have to talk to somebody." That's it. And I thought, well, you know what? Everybody's got to find something they like, and she likes that, and it works out great for her. I'm hoping next year we'll go up and operate field day with them every couple of years. My wife and I go up, and we run a 1A battery operation, and we'll use somebody's call, and it's a lot of fun. we might bring a couple other people. Maybe we'll have 5 or 6 hams. We all take 4 hours, and we'll put a few hundred contacts in a log. Everybody has a good time, and there is always a meal. I introduced my sister-in-law and her husband to a low country boil one year. They'd never had one, and they live about 20 miles north of Marion, Ohio, just between Columbus and Toledo. And I went into Marion and found shrimp and andouille sausage and everything else. And my sister-in-law said, "What are you going to do?" And I said, "Well, we're going to have a shrimp boil." She said, "What?" I said, "We're going to have a low country boil." And she looked at me, and this Brad will probably expound on this in a second. She looked at me and she said, "I don't know how I feel about this. You're from New York." I said, "It's okay. It's fine. I know how to do this. I've done it before. It's going to turn out great." And they loved it.
Almost about like your future Australian son-in-law and deep frying the turkey. It's like I've seen it on the internet, and they catch their house on fire.
Yeah.
John actually made a good comment talking about how scheduling people. And he says they have mode captains and they schedule the operators. And then some few fill-in cases. For people who get fatigued and need relief. That's probably good because you get hankering down there. If you signed up for 2 hours, you might be tired in an hour and just need a break, or you just got to get up and walk around. Another question. Here we go. For 100 extra points, can messages be sent and received via the home station and not the field day site? Section manager messages using the traffic system as well. And I think that probably so. I don't see why not. That probably there's some stuff that we don't know, and we need to get to the questions we got in email too, Mark. We have asked HQs some things that have come in. We're waiting on responses, and then there's some things we're just going to have to figure out. And some of this may not get figured out till, we get closer to when you got to turn your info in. We don't know.
Do you think there's going to be any issue or if some of the members decide they want to put together a more traditional field day somewhere and some of the members want to stay home and operate from their home stations? Can all of those contacts be put together into the aggregate score?
I don't see why not.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
What will have to happen, and this actually is going to roll into a couple of questions I got from the section public information coordinator, Tammy. I know she's out there somewhere, N4TAL. She asked me a couple of questions, one of which ties into yours. Individual stations can have their score aggregated with the club, provided that they put the club name in. When they load their scores for field day, there's a field where they can put in the name of their club, and if they do that, that score will become part of the club score. Now, that having been said, there's still a couple questions about that. I've asked the league, and I haven't gotten an answer yet, and it relates to the logic and how the software is going to work. Does a club have to let the league know ahead of time that they'll have members that'll be sending in scores that'll be pooled with what the club does? Or is it simply enough to put your club's name in there and they'll just, let's say for the Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club, anybody who says, aggregate my score with Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club, they'll just do it. And that probably seems like a difference without distinction, but here's where it gets tricky. Number one, there may or may not be another Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club somewhere in the U.S., but if there is, potentially there's some ambiguity there, but it should be resolved by section information, because that's part of what has to go in field day. And I can't imagine Spartanburg clubs in South Carolina. I hope not.
Here's the actual field day entry form here from the league's website. So, and there's the section you put in, and then over here the club or group name. Now you probably, there's not a lot of definition down there when you go down here. When I open that up, it says club or group name, the name of your club or group. So not a lot of help there, but At this point, what I would recommend is you guys need to decide what you're going to put in there, and then everybody put the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody should use the same thing. And to address the question about bonus points, if let's say Bruce was operating from home, and he originates a message to me, maybe on the South Carolina sideband net, and he gets bonus points. Well, if he puts the Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club name in that text field, all that will should get aggregated for Spartanburg. So that should take care of that. What else have we got, Brad?
John's got another question here, which is good because their club has 2 call signs. Can they use K4YTZ and N4YTZ from 2 different locations? I think you're gonna have to pick who's your primary, and then the other is gonna have to go into your aggregate score, so they would get separate. But for the one that you want for the club, you're gonna have to pick which one. Now, if the other is gonna be the GOTA, there's your GOTA stuff right here. I don't know how that works in the back end.
Let's I'll make a note of that and send it off to the league. But my understanding is for clubs with multiple call signs, you pick one, that's the primary call sign, and eventually everything gets rolled up under that. So the way it would look if they picked K4YTZ as the call sign for York County Amateur Radio Society, somebody could be operating N4YTZ, and that will be aggregated in the score, provided that the person who enters the N4YTZ data says that it goes with York County Amateur Radio Society.
Are there any concerns in that situation about both stations being on the same band and mode at the same time?
Nobody has even addressed that, and I
don't think it matters because that's going to go. If you're using 2 different call signs, it's 2 different stations. It's going to be
even though they're part of the same group.
It's going to go in the aggregate.
Yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. In principle, it's no different from Brad and me, both being members of York County Amateur Radio Society. If I choose to use my call sign, the scores will get rolled up under K4YTZ. It shouldn't be a problem. I don't know how many clubs have multiple calls. There are probably a few, but they'll have to. Yeah, you guys do, don't you?
Yes, we have 2 call signs.
What were your plans? How do you guys normally use 2 for field day, or do you give 1 to your GOTA station? Or
we usually use Kilo 4 India because it's such a good CW call.
Yep, short and sweet.
Yep.
Right, but you're just using 1 call sign.
Yes.
You don't have another group using the other call sign. Now, I know this year is completely different in that respect because actually you could, and it would go into your aggregate score. You just got to pick who's getting credit for the aggregate score.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is only 1 Spartanburg Amateur Radio Club, but I know there's at least 1 other group in the country that uses the acronym SPARC. So to your about everybody using the same name, I guess it would be important to spell out the full name and not use the aggregate on the application form.
Yep.
Yeah.
And as long as everybody agrees ahead of time and everybody uses the same thing, I think it'll work okay. When somebody misspells something, that's when the wheels will come off. People just have to be careful with that. And it's a 1-year thing, so we do the best we can with it. And next year, I think we'll be back to something a bit more normal. Let's see, what else have we got coming in, Brad? There's lots of concepts.
A lot of comments. John thanks us for the answer. Tammy's talking about how good parts of the hobby, and she even compared it to a diamond. It's multifaceted. And that's pretty good. I haven't thought of it like that.
That just ran across my screen.
She is female, so makes sense. The ladies like the diamonds.
One thing that we discussed that is not going to happen this year is we're not going to do any kind of effort to solicit public participation. We normally put out some signs and so forth to invite people to come and see the operation. Obviously, we can't do that.
That's going to be a challenge for bonus points this year. I don't know really. That's a lot of the stuff like that. I think. I don't know.
I think this year bonus points that clubs might have gotten in the past for visits from a public official, a city alderman, member of the General Assembly. That's just not practical this year. On the other hand, maybe people will look at some bonus points they hadn't taken advantage of, like originating a message to the section manager, or doing something with alternative energy, solar power or something like that, picking up some bonus points that way. The thing about field day is there are a lot of different things you can do. And in a time like we're in right now, it's important to look at the rules and say, okay, we can't do the stuff we normally did, but what can we do? What are the other things that we might try? And hopefully people will take advantage of this as an opportunity. And Tammy's being really nice to us. I keep seeing these great comments come across. Let's see. Other questions over here, Brad?
I think we've covered all the questions. Have we covered the ones we got in over email?
I think essentially we did. The ones that came in over email, let me go back and grab those. Okay.
We did address one. One of them was, if there's multiple, I think like Columbia, South Carolina, Columbia, Maryland, and Columbia. I think actually Columbia or Columbus is the most common town name in America. There's one in every state. But I think we covered that. Is you guys need, that's going to be separated by when you fill out the info. You got to declare what section you're in, and then you guys need to decide on what the club name is going to be, how you're going to display that, and then everybody put the same thing. That was one part of one of those questions in the email from earlier.
That was the second question. And if you're worried about the Columbia thing, you can always, for this purpose, use Columbia, South Carolina, Columbia SC Amateur Radio Club. And there's only one Columbia in South Carolina, and that will remove the ambiguity. The other question was about the aggregate scoring. Was that something that the clubs had to do and report to the league, or would the league do it? And the answer is the league software is going to take care of that. To facilitate that, it's just necessary for the folks entering the score to put that club name in. And that goes back to the discussion we just had. Each club will have to make sure that all the members know what name to enter so that everything gets properly aggregated.
And also that Class D stations can work everybody and get credit. Yep. And you order Class D stations.
That'll be a good opportunity for folks this year who might not have participated in the past for various reasons. Now they'll have an opportunity to jump in and make some contacts.
And
so while
another good thing is if you're looking to get your worked all states, this is a good contest to do that.
Yes, it is.
You're going to have the opportunity not just to help your club out, but you can get on the air, get credit for yourself, and give your club some credit, some recognition also. So it really is. It's a great way to do this. I think it's a pretty good solution, even if it's a one-time thing. It works a lot like a lot of the CQ contest does. Maybe we don't want to talk about that here, but they will do that. You can give credit to, one of your clubs that you're a member of. So I like it. I know it's only for a year, but I think it's a good option.
Well, it's something that folks should leverage. You mentioned something important that people often forget during field day. Field day is a big club event. There's a huge social component to it, and we know that's important. But it's also an opportunity for folks to get on individually and do things like pick up those states for worked all states, or heck, see how close you can get to completing 5-band worked all states during field day. If you're already halfway there, this is what might get you past the finish line. So there are reasons for folks, even though we don't have all the traditional field day activities this year, there are reasons for folks to participate in field day towards other things and work on those. And field day will provide a great opportunity to do that. And they can have their score rolled into their club. So the fact that they've made a decision to operate individually this year doesn't mean they also can't provide some assistance to their club through the score that gets rolled up.
I think it's an elegant solution to kind of a nasty situation. It's not a nasty problem. It's just a nasty situation.
Yeah, I really have to tip my hat to the league for stepping up and being willing to try something different.
What do you think?
At the end of the day, amateur radio is an experimental service, which means we're going to experiment. We're going to have to be willing to improvise, try different things.
Right here, right now.
Yeah.
With this platform here.
We are definitely making it up as we go along. Anyway.
Bruce, normally we do this. There's a beverage required, but we didn't do that for tonight because this is a little more formal. Next time you come on, whatever you like.
Okay. I'll remember that.
There you go.
You guys are on here every week.
Bruce, any more comments on field day and what's going on in Spartanburg?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. We will have some kind of field day activity. We're not sure exactly what form it's going to take at this point, but we will definitely be involved, and you will see K4II in the final listings, hopefully with a good score.
Great. Well, I will not be making my usual field day visits this year, but instead I'll be glued to the radio looking specifically for South Carolina stations and working them. So I'll have the opportunity to make a 10 or 15 second virtual visit. And we'll see how that goes. And I'll be operating from, rare, exotic York County, South Carolina.
Well, when we talk about contesting at club meetings, I always try and promote that activity. It's something I enjoy doing. We mentioned the fact that South Carolina is a relatively rare state. And even if you're not interested in building up a big contest score, you can help somebody else by giving them South Carolina as a multiplier. So it's help out your fellow man kind of thing.
Yep. And I have had that experience. I'm mostly a VHF contester, but sometimes I'll dip my toe in the HF water. And I'm always shocked when people will say to me, "Oh, thanks for South Carolina. I've been looking for that." I'm thinking, there are like 11,000 hams in South Carolina. But I guess a lot
of them are not active and not contesters.
Yeah. One of the high points of my ham career was one year in sideband sweepstakes. It was about 15 minutes to go in the contest, and some guy called me, and I gave him South Carolina. He was missing South Carolina for a clean sweep.
Wow, isn't that a good feeling?
He was so happy. And I was happy for him. So, and you mentioned different aspects and people getting experience at field day. We've had situations where technician class licensees show up at field day because it's their one and only chance to work HF. Mm-hmm. And have several folks that get a big thrill out of that. So we always try and make room for them.
Yeah, and I tried to encourage field day. It's not CQ Worldwide. We're not working all this for points. We're working on this to exploit the hobby, get some exposure, have a good time, and maybe expose some new people or some younger people who haven't been on HF, get them on that. And that's what it's about, not about counting numbers.
Well, that argument kind of goes on under the surface here in Spartanburg. There are some of us that say it is a contest and we're out for points. And then there are other folks that say, no, it's not. It's a social event and time to promote amateur radio to the public. So
there's no awards. You get no awards. So,
as long as we beat Greer, we're happy.
And
one of these years we're going to do it.
If you keep it just a personal contest among some other clubs or whatever, there's nothing wrong with that. But if you get somebody new coming in that hasn't had a lot of HF experience and they're like wanting to get on, I think you kind of got to let them get on and help them out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You're probably not going to have much of that problem because when you're working CW, they're going to like, yeah, I'm staying away from that.
I'm lucky if somebody opens the door, sticks their head in, goes right back out. They don't want to see that.
They could bring you a drink every once in a while. It'd be nice, I'm sure.
And they do.
Yeah, well, that's good. Tammy had one other question. As the league consider a new award for clubs that gets lots of operation on the air or any other encouragement awards? The league does not do awards for field day.
Yep.
But that's not a bad point to try to get clubs to make this more of a social event, as Bruce's members would say, than opposed to just, a numbers about points.
Well, here's an interesting thought, Brad. I wonder if we have access to the scores. maybe we should take it on ourselves to provide some sort of certificate to, or some sort of award to clubs that do something. If it's not something that's going to be done nationally, at least we could do it on a sectional basis and recognize folks that have done different things, like getting a lot of people on the air. That's certainly one aspect of field day. And there is definitely a competitive aspect to field day. People tell me it's not a contest, but I guarantee you get some folks who are operating and they're competitive. They want to make as many contacts as they can, do as much as they can, post as many points as possible. So I think it's a little of both. It's not just a contest, and it's not just an operating event. It's got elements of both. And I'm looking at the sidebar, and yeah, I see you've got the.
With all the results are available. They are available on the website. However, we don't have the raw data. So aggregating this is kind of a pain.
Yeah.
Oh, we can sort by section.
Yep.
But if it only gives us okay, that's something we can figure something out, and maybe we just do something as a section. What do you think?
Yeah, why not? What the heck? We'll try it out. We'll see how it goes.
Don't count any trophies or anything. All right, it takes. We're awful at that. We haven't done it from last year yet, but we're going to get you some very nice certificates. How's that?
Well, if you present awards like that based on points, then you are making field day a
crap. You're right. Damn it.
It's
you and your logic.
Unfortunately, the only data you have to work with is the final score.
I wonder, it would be nice if they would show us the bonus points. If they showed us the bonus points, we could maybe do something. Who got the most bonus points? Because that's mostly for getting out in the public and stuff like that.
Well, Bruce has raised a good point. Anytime you start giving awards for something, it's now a contest. And how do you know it's a contest? Because you can win something.
Yeah.
But I appreciate Tammy's sentiment. It would be nice to recognize folks who have done something unique, and I'd like to do that. We're going to have to think through it very carefully, because as Bruce so eloquently pointed out, once you do that, it kind of turns it into a contest. And I suspect that's where the league has stayed away from it all these years.
All right. So maybe we need to stick to, even if you guys are doing this, we could still do, Mark, we need to have an offline conversation, because we can still use social media, photographs, and do the same awards type that we kind of did last year. We don't actually have to see it as long as they post it, because that's what we were asking for last year anyway, really, because we couldn't get to everybody.
No, and we didn't want to deal with the scores.
But now the most unique location, I don't know how you compete with the Yorktown.
Well, on the other hand, correct me if I'm wrong, but when field day started back in the 1930s, I think the original intent was for amateurs to be able to test their equipment under emergency conditions, because MCOM was a big deal, from the very beginning. So here comes this idea for field day: take your stuff out away from your house, set it up. Much bigger challenge back then than it is now, with all the tube stuff and all that. But
I was real men then.
And to measure how effective your station is, unfortunately, in ham radio, the only way to do that is to measure the number of contacts you make.
Yeah.
Kind of between a rock and a hard place, It's,
well, to quantitate something that's objective like that, the only way to do it is to put numbers with it, and that.
Yeah.
Well, and field day evolved that first time. I can't remember. It was 1933 or 1934. Nobody thought it was going to be.
You weren't there.
My bald head and
you're going to make that comment?
No, I was not.
Oh, okay.
Were you
there, Bruce? Bruce was not.
No, I was not. No.
But when the first time they did it, as Bruce said, it was very much about finding out if people could operate under less than ideal conditions. Could you drag stuff, and literally drag stuff? Think about what was available in terms of equipment. Take that out into a park, into a field somewhere, and operate, make some contacts. And in the early 1930s, given the state-of-the-art equipment that exists, the state-of-the-art then was pretty primitive. And I can't imagine running field day with those enormous boat anchor transmitters and receivers and, trying to keep that stuff running with dynamotors and vibrators. And then the automobiles at the time had 6-volt electrical systems, and you could kill one of those batteries in a matter of 20 or 30 minutes. It was quite an accomplishment. And I don't think at first they did it one time, and I guess everybody enjoyed it so much they went ahead the next year, 1934, and did it again, and then it became a thing. Mm-hmm. It caught on, and it's pretty much happened every year since then. Obviously, there was no amateur radio during World War II, but other than that, Field Day has been an annual event the fourth weekend in June. Well, Brad, our hour's about up.
Boy, I was just looking at the scores, Bruce, and yet from last year. That's at K4SV. That's the Greer Club, right? So, mm-hmm. Yeah, they edged you out quite a bit. They ran a 2 alpha. They had 1,849 Qs for a total score of 6,384. K4II had 735 Qs, but they were in a different category, 2AC, and a score of 2,644. But that's the person that actually won is a 4 alpha, which is K4 NAB, 1,702 Qs with 6,550 points. They had 30 participants, and that's the North Augusta Belvedere Club. And then K4 SV had 51 participants. Mm-hmm. I think everybody that came to eat, they wrote them down. There was about 50 people there when I was there at dinner. I'm sure there weren't 50. Well, they had a fair amount of stuff going on, and then you guys in Spartanburg had 22 participants.
Well, Greer is a top-notch operation when it comes to field day. That's for sure. They are consistently high scoring, so they do a good job over there.
Yeah. Well, I think we hadn't had any more questions. Bruce, you got anything else you want to add? Mark?
I don't think so, but I really appreciate you guys inviting me to be here today, and I hope I was able to contribute some information that will help somebody else. So,
you were great, Bruce. Really appreciate you coming.
All right. We'll let you know what we come up with as far as field day, but we will be there in one form or another.
And I'll be looking for KII on the air. Hopefully I can work in several different bands.
All right. We'll listen for you.
All right. Thanks, guys, for stopping in. This is our first real big live stream we did. We had some pretty good participation. If you guys liked it, leave us a comment on it. This will be available after this is done being live. Once it's processed between YouTube and Facebook, it will be available on the YouTube channel. And
we missed a question.
Oh, did we? Oh, one that just came in. That was a question.
Yeah, this one's an interesting one. Actually, there are a couple questions. Mark Goddard wanted to know, will this presentation be recorded and available for others? Absolutely. It will be available on YouTube.
Yeah, I responded to them in the comments.
Okay. And there was another one about messages. Where the heck did it go? Somebody asked a question about.
I think we talked about that.
About
bonus points on how that's going to.
William Covey Sr. For 100 points extra credit, can messages be sent and received via the home station on the field day site? Yes. I think we covered that one. I want to make sure we didn't miss anybody. So I was just taking one quick surf through the list.
And everybody that gets that message, that's 100 points for everybody that does it in the club for your aggregate score. So if you got 5 people running at home and they all 5 send a thing, there's your 500 points, right? Is that how that works? Doesn't that be how that works? We don't know. We don't know. That's question. But it's something we'll have to send up to the league. And I'm sure they're going to be bombarded with a lot of questions, and there's going to be more
Yeah,
later.
they're probably, I'm sure that Steve Ewald is not going to want to see any more emails from me pretty soon.
No, but this is our job, is to relay comments and questions from the rest of the hobby back up to HQ and the other way. I think that's part of why we're doing this. This is what we got to do. So, and that's their job, is to answer our questions.
Well, one of their jobs.
One of their jobs.
All right, Bruce, thanks a
Great
lot.
job, guys. Thank you very much. This is a good format, a good platform, and appreciate you inviting me to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
All right.
Really appreciate you joining us. Give my regards to Lisa and the rest of the folks in the Spartanburg Club, and hopefully I'll get a chance to see you guys sometime soon.
You're welcome. Come on over anytime.
Okay, 73.
All right, guys. See ya.
Bye.